Medical school is a different kind of a beast because when you start it, you don't really realize how long it's going to be. I mean, sure, you can look up the statistics, you can think about how many years each course takes if you just look into the academic curriculum as well as logically where you want to specialize afterwards. But mentally, you come to have this feeling that medicine is just never ending because no matter how many ever exams you pass, there just seems to be more and more, and you see your colleagues or the people that you studied with, how they are progressing a lot faster in their life. They're getting jobs, they're getting promotions, whereas you're still stuck studying, and it can be quite a pain, mainly because you realize you made your decision and you need to follow through with it, and it's taking a really long time. And there are a lot of times you despair about what happens. But if you are someone that finds it difficult, do stick to doing hard things for long periods of time, then medical school won't be for you, especially since you won't see the rewards from being a doctor, even if you get the degree till much later, or even the process of trying to get the medical degree itself can be quite exhaustive and can wear you down mentally, physically, depending on the hurdles that await you. Now, if there's one thing that I would say that determines if medical school is for you or not, would be how you can handle vivas, or rather oral examinations, because what I came to realize was in school you have very few oral examinations. You can present here or there for some of your assignments, but ultimately you have the choice of doing mainly projects and written examinations. So you don't really expect the number of oral examinations you have to prepare for, especially since in medical school, or at least in my experience in Czech Republic, you come to realize, like, as you go down the years or you go up the years, depending on how you look at it, the number of oral examinations increase, whereas the number of written ones decrease accordingly. In the first 2 years, I found there to be quite a lot of written examinations for my weekly as well as, let's just say, bi-weekly exams or tests. But at the end, what determines whether you actually get through a certain subject or you pass the year would be the oral examinations. It's like the initial 20% to 30% almost would be more of the written or other forms of testing, but the rest of it, I would say more than 70% of it would be oral examinations. And if you're uncomfortable with being able to answer on the spot, or in general just prepare for the exam and actually go there and present your answers in a way that sounds logically sound as opposed to it being written examinations, then it's going to be a really tough time trying to survive in medical school. But this doesn't mean you don't just give up on medical school if this is what's holding you back, but rather it's important to train this muscle of being able to answer accurately, as well as to come up with a narrative that actually logically makes sense for your professors, especially if English is not their first language, because a lot of the times when you have a difference in language or there's a language barrier, then you're more prone to communication errors, which occur in general even when you do try and communicate in languages that you are familiar with. So especially if there's a mismatch between the language you know as well as what your professor knows, then it's easier to have miscommunication as well as errors. And that's why it's important to write down whatever you wish to convey and convey it in a clear and concise manner, as opposed to beating around the bush, because a lot of the times the professors have a tough time understanding what you say if English is not their first language, and they look for key terms. Like, for example, in anatomy, I remember one of the professors wanted a specific terminology like Bochdalek's triangle as opposed to sternocostal triangle. And yeah, so it's important sometimes to also understand what terminology the professors look for, because depending on where you study, sometimes certain anatomical structures, or as an example, they would have specific names, and some professors prefer these names, especially the Latin ones, or the actual founding doctor or researcher's name attached to a certain structure as opposed to what you might think of logically. So it's important to know some of these key terms, as well as it really helps to understand who your professor could be, especially if it's someone that you know beforehand, so you can prepare accordingly for their exam. Otherwise, you could be screwed over. So yeah.